Hello, everybody. This is Tom Coyle, and today is November 11th, 2018, for a few more hours anyway. And this is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, the end of hostilities. The peace would not formally end for quite some time. Specifically, June 1919 is when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, formally ending the war and creating some of the legacies that we're left with today. The most obvious legacy is that the Allies' decision to punish the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, was it sown the seeds for World War II. Much of the reasons that World War II started was because of the punishment and harsh treatment of Germany following that war. Before going on, let's even look at the perspective. It's a very interesting case study when you take a look at just exactly who were the good guys. On one hand, if you look at the start of the war, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo by Joseph Princip, a Serbian. And the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they blamed Serbia for starting this war. So as far as they declared war on Serbia and invaded. In their view, they were fighting terrorism. They were the good guys. Of course, the Serbians and the Balkan people, they had a legitimate gripe as well. They felt they were occupied by the Austrians, and this was an occupation that they were trying to fight. So they kind of had a legitimate gripe. And then the Allied powers, which came to the aid of Serbia, they're looking at a country that was attacked, and so they think they're the good guys. So basically, everyone thought they were the good guys, and this is a very important lesson when we're studying war or statecraft. Everyone believes their point of view is legitimate. Everyone believes they have a beef or a gripe that they need to address. So that's one thing. But let's just talk about the war. Obviously, we talk about World War II, but what many don't realize is that Europe was probably the bloodiest and most focal of fronts for World War I, but actually it really was a world war because it took place on multiple fronts. One of the things, talking about the Middle East today, if you're familiar with the story of Lawrence of Arabia, he helped arm the Arabs to fight the Ottoman Turks in the Middle East. And so, Middle East today, so much of what goes on goes back to the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which England and France put together in 1916, 2 years before the end of the war, in anticipation of an Allied victory. Basically, they carved out the entire Middle East map, created countries and borders that didn't necessarily make sense. The reason, in fact, you have countries today where, in some cases until very recently, where you had a minority government ruling, such as the Sunni in Iraq or the Alawite Shia in Syria, is the colonial powers put these minority tribes in power and gave them favor, and in return their allegiance to their European powers. So that was one of the big legacies. The big legacy was the fact that, look at the Middle East, much of this is how they divided up and broke up tribes. We're seeing that today in many of our Middle East conflicts. The other thing it really did, another costly thing, is when Lawrence convinced the Arabs to join him in this revolt, and they were not sure of his real motives there, he assured that the Arabs would be given an independent state, and England kind of walked back on that after the war ended. Yeah, you know about the independent state thing? Yeah, no, nah. We're going to run the show here. So that also played a part in some of the things going on today. And now you look at today, you might be seeing a lot of the news between Saudi Arabia and Turkey and all the spat going on about the killing of that journalist. And what you may not realize is that under the Ottoman Empire days, the Turks were actually the custodians of Mecca and Medina. And so that they have like a claim to Mecca and Medina. And so part of that, the Saudis and the Turks have been rivals since that time period. And so actually, Saudi Arabia wasn't even a country at that time. It wasn't until 1932 Saudi Arabia actually became a country. And so that rivalry goes back over centuries. And so this is continuing to this day. So a couple of things there. So you have to look at it as, everyone thought they were right. And then how we formed the peace created more conflicts. World War II, only not too many years later. And then, of course, the Middle East conflicts we see today, all going back to World War I. That was a little brief thing. I've sort of simplified the history a bit, but it just kind of touches on the high points of that. Hope you find this video useful. Please share with your friends. Thanks. Have a great night.